Welcome, everyone, to our December Live. We are going to go into a discussion on depression. And a big reason why we want to shed light on this is because tis the season. We have holidays coming up. We're already exposed to high amounts of trauma as it relates to, trigger warning, depression, and other um, violence we see. As we just did our last week's discussion on just a town hall talking about the community violence that's constantly going on. So we now want to highlight depression so that people are able to kind of prepare for the season as opposed to allowing, energy and what may come to get the best of us. So welcome again. Thank you for joining. We are excited to just have this discussion and bring more mental health information. Wellness information. I am Jacqueline Stevenson, the Executive Director of Counselors in the Community Association. And
Hello.
yep, we can go ahead and
Okay. Hello, I'm Yashica Smith. I am a professional school counselor. I'm also an author and a member of CITCA.
Tammara.
Hi, I'm Tammara. I'm also a licensed professional counselor, um, and I own a Brighter Tomorrow Counseling in Michigan, Nashville. Correction, Michigan, Tennessee, and New Jersey is the areas that we serve.
Awesome. And thank you, Tamara, so much for joining us this evening. We are super excited to just have someone with your experience and knowledge to join us during this discussion. So, again, thank you. So, as we open up this discussion, we want to just understand first, go into the basics, right? Start at the beginning and then break it down. So, let's go into what is depression, the signs and symptoms, and just the impact it has on families, loved ones, communities, um, and friendships.
Yeah, so I would like to start off like basically just telling everyone one thing that we use. A lot of times we may feel like we may have depression because we may have a depressed mood. But there's a lot of different signs and symptoms that go with depression. It's not just one thing. And one thing that we use is the DSM. This is a DSM-5. If you all can see that, there's a DSM-5 revised copy now. But this is typically what we use when diagnosing someone with depression. Um, and the reason why we use it is because there's multiple signs and symptoms. So you just give me a second to get to the
Now,
page.
from what you've seen, Yashika, as it relates to signs and symptoms, um, what are most common in just the everyday person where they can recognize, okay, let me pay attention a little bit. Something might be going on with me. Oh, shucks, you muted, Chica. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I would say for me, because I work in a school setting, so it looks different with kids. Sometimes they can be very moody. The mood's just kind of, it's like a trigger, and it's like, Johnny's happy right now, and then something triggers it, and Johnny's not. It's just like a constant mood change. I've also seen like withdrawal, like people pulling away from people, and it's so hard to tell from me, from my from my personal experience. Most of the people that I know that suffer depression never talked about it. So, and I never, I never noticed it because they always appeared happy, if so to speak, until something actually happened. It was like, oh, that's what it was. But in my everyday of working with kids, it's usually a mood change, or them withdrawing, or them acting out, angry, upset about even the smallest little detail.
And to keep it a stack, we are going to pretty much, first of all, we are kind of naturally prone to majority. I'm not gonna say everybody to kind of keep it in.
Yeah.
Just the embarrassment or the judgment that may go into, being around someone and expressing what you could be going through. That's that stigma, right? Those stigmas that prevent us from feeling comfortable or willing to open up and kind of speak about this.
Yeah.
So we're used to being like, okay, I'm not even going to say anything. I'm good, and they get home. Some of us process it. Some of us just, repeat the cycle of a daily
Yeah.
sadness and isolation and things like that.
Yeah. I think that's a huge piece of it.
Tammara, are you
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. I didn't want to. I didn't want to. I didn't
No,
want to
you're fine.
interrupt.
Look, jump in, whatever.
Yeah, because there's a lot of different symptoms. I mean, and everybody like she was saying, there's a lot of different ways that depression can look. So it is isolation is really big with depression, and everybody isolation looks different because if you're an extroverted type of person, it may just be you staying home and but you're still having some contact with people, maybe by phone or video chat or whatever, because you may not necessarily cut off everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be harder to see, but it really takes what I call attuning into people. Like parents have to attune into their children to really see what's going on. It could be, I know, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to remember your name. uh, but at the school, typically the kids that do the screamo, they typically have the depression, and then they might go into other issues such as cutting and other things like that. Or the kids that paint their nails black, they're typically the depressed ones. But when comes to adults, it still looks like irritability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And easily agitated. Um, and it can
Anxiety.
also, yeah, and it also is cousins. I say depression is cousins with anxiety as
Yeah.
well. So you combine that anxiety, you're going to already be irritable. You're going to already not be getting sleep. Then
Mm-hmm.
depression, you don't get a lot of sleep. Maybe, and when I say not enough sleep, that's less than 7 hours of sleep.
Mm.
Because our body needs at least 7 to 8 hours to function properly. So if you're getting 5 hours, you're already going to feel that fatigue, which is also a symptom of depression, but also a sign of anxiety. So you really have to know we need to pay attention to one another more because you don't want to wait until it gets to the point of suicide. And that's the only sign you see is that, oh, this person tried to overdose on a substance or try to shoot themselves or whatever way they try to harm themselves. You don't want it to get to that point. That's the severe stage.
And
Depression.
during one of our lives, we brought in the statement that sometimes the care factor for people is gone. It seems like it's almost like it's a careless thing, like, oh well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Because a lot of times, especially in the Black community, um, I would say the main diagnosis that people that's not in the profession know is bipolar. When people are not attuned to one another or have enough empathy for one another to say, hey, you know what? They said something crazy to me, but I don't really think it was them talking. I think something is really going on with them. We
Mm-hmm.
don't do that. We just react. Well, I don't care what's going on with them. That's how we typically react because we feel like we all have something going on. And so we don't stop to take care of one another.
Yeah.
So we miss the signs of whatever it is that somebody may be going through.
And you bringing that up reminds me again of our last week's discussion on when we was like, how can we break these stigmas and kind of reduce the violence and show up as a community? And it reminded me when you just said that, just being that unicorn out the bunch to be like, even though somebody else not speaking, I'm gonna go ahead and speak. Even though somebody else is having a horrible day, I'm not really gonna allow that to get to me because I know it's them, not me. This is a level of awareness we need to get to as a community where we're able to do that. We're able to be emotionally intelligent enough to not take everything someone says or does so personal into heart. You know what I'm saying? That's not
Yeah.
being
Right.
emotionally intelligent or
Yeah.
emotionally aware, because you really should be in check of your own emotions and understand that somebody else's is their own. So even them lashing out, I understand. This is myself, as opposed to, feeding into this, and it really could be so juvenile where it's like, why were we, what was the point, and that reminds me of that generational kind of stuff you mentioned, Tammara, the impact of it.
Yeah,
absolutely. How we're passing down schemas, we're passing down schemas, stories that we've been told and that we've developed over our childhood. What does that look like when it manifests? And now we actually believe it. Instead of saying it, because we could say, oh, we try to teach our child a story and a schema of you are a queen, you are a king. However, if the behavior is not such, and every time your son or your daughter misbehave, they're being yelled at, or they're getting threatened to get a spanking, or the fear factor is put into place versus the charismatic, the loving factor is put into place, then guess what? You're teaching them that if they mess up, then they have something to fear.
And some parents feel like, especially men, they feel like you got to instill that fear in the child to get the respect. So, and sometimes you feel like that, like when you give them that look, or, you grab them up a little bit, they do get in line. But it's so many variables to that. We're repeating that cycle of kind of like that slave bondage and beatings and spankings for control and stuff like that. But how do you create that balance, right? Many parents, even when I'm in the community talking and networking and speaking and supporting, I noticed that a lot of parents will say, like, what do I do? How do I make this child listen, behave, represent themselves the way I try to teach them to do without being physical,
Right. And that's the thing, is that it's not an overnight fix, right? This is a journey that we're all taking, and hopefully you have a community to take that journey with you. And so, because we don't want respect to mean fear. And we got to think Black men have one of the highest incarceration rates, right? So you don't want that institutionalized attitude coming out, and you're inadvertently training your child to have that institutional attitude.
And even though you may have never even been to the institute, it's still that influence, because all of us have had that influence of somebody we know, somebody we've been affiliated with, or we know about the prisoner pipeline and all of these kind of higher imprisonment. So like you said, even if you haven't, though. It's in your subconscious, it's in your psyche.
It's crazy. I'm sorry. I was just going to say quickly, it would piggyback off what Jackie was saying about men, how men teach their boys to be man up. You man, you don't cry. Even mothers do it. I see mothers do it to their sons. And it's like, we have to create a space for our kids, because I always say this, they're not going to wake up at 21 and have the tools to be an adult. If you don't prepare them with the little bit of tools that you got, by the time they get 21, they're going to need therapy. They're going to need something, because the things that we're instilling in them, most of it is already been given to us by our parents. So we're just regurgitating what we see our parents do.
Let's go there. They're going to need it at 21.
No explanation. Like, we don't know why we're doing it,
They're going to need it at 21 and not seek it because of all the stigma, and they've never been empowered to do so. So now it's like, when we think we're going to get they're going to get better over time. No, they're not. They're actually going to potentially
get worse, because we created that. When you create that fear, that creates like an isolation to it in itself in different variables. Because if you're telling if a kid is trying to speak up and have a voice, and you're telling me you're a kid, you're not supposed to say this, or you're not supposed to, whatever it may be, that creates an isolation for that kid as they go through life. They become an adult who can't stand up for themselves and can't speak up when they need to speak up. Things like, we have to realize, like, a lot of our parenting habits, because that's what most of them are, don't have any real foundation or value. It's just something we do, and all our relationships, the things that we have to do have to be restorative. So
we don't really view things from a different perspective versus that one frame sometimes. And what I mean by that is, instead of looking at it like you're being disrespectful or disobedient or whatever, we can look at it like, okay, this is a teaching moment. This is a teaching opportunity for me to allow my child to understand why I'm saying what I'm saying, why you should be doing what I'm recommending, Maybe even share some outcomes of the pros and cons to doing and not doing, and bringing up real examples that they've actually experienced so that they can reflect. So it's really a teaching moment when our children are giving us feedback sometimes, so that they can kind of understand and better process the world. Sometimes it's not always about, disrespect. Sometimes it's about just expression.
Right. It's not always about the power and control. So
Yeah.
because if you look at teenagers or kids when they rebel, how many of them is going to say, why, you ask them, why do they do it? And it boils down to not feeling like they belong or feeling unheard.
Mm-hmm.
So is if you can actually listen to your child and you can really understand, and that's when you tune in to what's really going on with them. If their
Yeah.
thoughts are all jacked up and distorted, then if they feel heard, then they can hear you. But if we don't feel heard, even as adults, we don't hear them. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, it is a level of boundaries, right? But they're not going to respect those boundaries
Mm-hmm.
if they do not feel heard. And then you get into a
Mhm.
power and control struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And then you feel like you really got to go ahead and knock them upside the head,
Yeah.
you know? And
Patient
so
is a
now
big
you have,
deal.
right. So then the more that's done to us, the less empathy we have.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's that cycle. Why should I have empathy? I survived it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do what I'm not doing to my child, what my parents did to me. I got
Mm.
spanked naked in the tub with a wet extension cord.
Yes.
Or you go back to the days of the switches, and where you could have the little red marks on your arm. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, we're not doing that to them. So I am being nice. And so it's really, if you look at the Maslow hierarchy of need,
Mm-hmm.
and if you look at, it's called the 7 desires of every heart. And you incorporate that with these stories that we have been told, these negative stories, the schemas that I was telling you guys about, all of those combined goes together. And it still goes
Love
back
that.
to belonging, the need. It's not even a want anymore, it's a need. And so we talk about how to build generational wealth in the sense of monetary things, but how do you build emotional wealth?
Mm. Girl,
It's,
you better
That's
come
the
through
word.
with that. Yes, you need to do it. Wow. I was just speaking to someone today about how, even if from a professional workforce kind of perspective, we don't understand that, yeah, you can be a leader, but you can also be a leader who's not emotionally aware, to the sense where you are not taking care of your team or your
Mhm.
staff or yourself. And in return, you're what? Losing employees and staff and all types of turmoil, and not understanding that you are really, the what's the impact right now. Emotional intelligence is very important, again, to be able to even just recognize somebody else's crap is not my own. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So this has been a great way
Yeah.
to help to just share information and insight
Yeah.
on what depression is, the signs and symptoms, and even some of those examples that we provided have been a great starting point into this discussion. Something that happened this week. What were you saying, Sheikah? It was about the guy that just committed suicide. What did
Yeah.
just happen?
I was about to say so much has happened, but one of the stories I read this week was a 51-year-old principal in California who jumped to his death from the parking garage in in Disneyland on Saturday. He had made this long Facebook post about how he went to jail. Well, apparently him and his wife a couple of weeks ago got into an argument, and it was said that he hit her. He put his hands on her, and so he was arrested for child endangerment. Um, Child endangerment, I want to say domestic abuse, and there was something else. I can't remember exactly. So he spent the night in jail, but he was put on administrative leave with his school district. And he basically wrote this long post to explain what actually happened. And I guess his wife had been trying to fix what happened, but the way the system was broken, it was kind of like he felt overwhelmed, basically, the way he was being treated, how things were going, and how he wasn't able to save his name in the process of
Mm.
all of this happening. So he jumped to his death. And that, I mean, that's just like one of many stories. And it's kind of like we don't know what people are dealing with. Even you could be married to somebody and you may think like, I don't want to say strength is the word because we use that too much and it's not even the case, but him being able to sustain, like, you've been put in jail because your wife said this and the police can't, nobody's hearing you. Nobody's listening to what you're going through. Nobody's understanding like your side of the story, and the system automatically, you get arrested. Yeah. And it's like you automatically get put into jail without any explanation of, let me tell my side of the story.
And imagine this. Let's shed light into the fact that this was a professional.
Yeah.
But this guy had worked his way not only to earn all his academic degrees that's required, not only beat all the candidates to make it to be a principal at a school
for over 21 years.
And then this person, in to their perspective, has been doing the best that they can. Because remember, just because we don't feel like what you're doing is good does not mean that what that person is not doing is giving they're giving their best. That's their best. That's understanding people, being able to know who people are and their behaviors and things like that. Because at the end of the day, people are who they are.
Yeah.
And if you're going to stay with someone, you need to really accept who they are. Yeah. You feel me? Or you really are doing both of you and your entire home family system a disservice because it's constant turmoil. But he didn't work his way all the way to accomplish this as a professional. And then go through this and now have my reputation dragged. And now, for some people, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
He has been being heard. Nobody's listening to him, because now he's at the point where he's done with it.
Yeah. And he doesn't know what to do. And I think a big piece of us discussing emotional wealth, like a big piece of that is being able to be real, be vulnerable about where you are, the state that you're in, whatever it may be, with your husband, with your wife, with whoever, because we don't understand vulnerability a lot of times because we haven't been taught to understand it, because we're taught to be tough and strong and deal with it and keep pushing and push through. But it is huge when it comes to people's mental health.
Yes. And you know what? One reason, in part, because when we are vulnerable, that means we're at a very gentle, very sensitive, very weaker state. Yeah. Right? So under this state, your mind already has to fight off all the daily influences and impacts and stressors and all of these things. So then you're in a vulnerable space and your environment still is heavily conducive to all of those things that drag you down on a daily you fight to overcome. Right. It's a different level of strength. So if we're constantly beating people down, they go home to a beat down life, we have no respect or care to even speak to somebody or whatever. It's like we are not doing the community a service. We are creating a larger community of people who are unwell, unheard, uncared for.
Yeah. And it's like you said, you got to go back to being, like we talked in the last live, being that unicorn, because society says it's not about community anymore. It's about me, what I want, what I want to do. And when you're focused on me, you can't pay attention to those cues. You can't pay attention to what's happening around you. And so, I mean,
spiritually speaking, giving.
Yeah.
When you give, you get, right? Yeah. And that's not just financially, that's spiritually, that's emotionally, psychologically. Like when you give, you get. So what I mean by that is just feeling that community is what uplifts us. It's the power of that positive connection, that positive energy, just lifting us, right? Building us and bringing us what we need. It's like you get that abundance of receiving higher vibration of positivity and good energy when we give it out more. That's just the reality of what? Law and attraction.
Right. You reap what you sow, basically.
Yes. Now, some self-assessing ways. Like, what are some ways that people, again, can kind of be able to determine if maybe they may need to see someone or need to read into resources to kind of take care of their mental health because they're experiencing or they notice what, like what are some self-assessing techniques that people could do? Anybody have
Some
a
things,
thought?
yeah, some things that stand out is a change in your eating habits, especially if you
Mm,
struggle with your weight. You can really recognize, are you an emotional eater? Are you eating more because you're feeling down, or because you're feeling worthless, or because you're feeling low? Or are you eating less and now you're losing weight because you're so stressed out that
mm,
you're not even eating maybe once a day or a half a meal throughout the day. So, and again, the sleep is very important. The sleep is very important. The really thinking about, when was the last time you were happy? If you can't remember
mm-hmm.
the last time you were happy, you have some depression going on. And it's different levels to the depression. So I want people to really understand that you don't have to be suicidal to have depression. Okay, suicidal thoughts is a result in of the severity of those signs and symptoms, such as feeling worthless, feeling better off not being here, feeling that your life doesn't have any meaning. When I ask you ladies, if I was to ask you ladies, what gives your life meaning? Um, Hopefully you guys could say something. A lot of people say family, religion, seeing what they can do with their life, seeing what they can accomplish. But if you
Mm-hmm.
sit there and you say, I don't know, that's a big sign that you're not attuned to yourself and what you're going through, and that you've been living with your, maybe you've been living with your depression for a very long time, to where this is just this is just life for you. Some people, when it's really severe, they can't go to work, so they can't keep a job because they don't have the energy to get up out of bed. um, I have a friend that suffers with depression, and she told me, she says, Tamara, sometimes people kill themselves because they want the pain to stop.
Mm,
It can be physically and emotionally painful. So
absolutely.
think about the people that have like medical issues. It's not easy to have a medical issue that's chronic, because it has an impact on your life for the rest of your life. And that can be very disheartening. And some people can have depression, major depression, because of the medical health condition. Um,
So you had mentioned something about depression variables and situation depression.
yeah,
Like,
a depression because of adjustment disorder. So say for instance, you're getting a divorce. Okay. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal.
mm-hmm,
Um, you might feel like it's anger that you're experiencing, but under anger is an emotion that does not stand on its own. If you look at anger as an iceberg, right? Anger is the tip of the iceberg, is what people see. But you can go underneath that water, it's hurt, it's sadness, it's betrayal. And with all of those feelings, you better believe you're going to have some depression under with that.
mm-hmm.
So, but that does not mean that you have major depressive disorder. That does not mean that you have to take medication for this type of depression. What that means is that you may need to talk to somebody, such as myself, because I don't prescribe medication. Talk to somebody, work through what's going on with you, to have a sounding board.
So what about those nayers that feel like, man, therapists, all they do is just have you sit on the couch and just talk. I mean, what is talking going to do? What is, like, what are those?
Yeah.
What's the thoughts of that?
Yeah. Okay. First off, I don't sit on the couch. I sit on the floor because it's most comfortable for me. And that's what I love, because I do telehealth. So it's it's not, we're not Frasier, you know. Um you need to really be able to think about yourself and think about really what's going on with you. A lot of people are afraid to look at themselves in the mirror. You can look at
Mm.
yourself and see a hair on your face, but can you look at yourself and really say who I am and be proud of that person? And so talking about it is going to really let you know, where are your issues with yourself? What has really happened to you? What have you really been carrying on your shoulders? And it's kind of like a balloon, and you let the air out of it slowly. That's what the coping skills are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I like to work out, but somebody else may not like to work out. They might like to cook. Okay, so you can use that. They might like to drive. They might be a truck driver or whatever. They like to drive, and that's how they clear their head.
Mm-hmm.
Smoking weed is not going to help you long term.
I'm gonna say you gonna have the agree to disagree doing that, where they gonna be like, you had me until in, like, what's like,
Yeah, yeah. Some people can smoke weed all day, trying to get rid of the depression, trying to get rid of the anxiety, and then what do you find? You find yourself smoking more and more, trying different types of weeds. Eating gummies. You got to be able to function. You got to be able to be happy, sober, and so
that's interesting.
people, yeah,
That is interesting and leads us into our next part of this, which goes into the kind of coping part of it, being able to plan and prepare. Because another thing that you said that was so interesting to me was that um, you tell your clients to kind of prepare for this in like September, so that before
absolutely,
those later seasons come in where it gets really, really heavy and dark, you are kind of already prepared yourself, that intervention, shall we call it, right?
absolutely right. Um, you got to look at December, November, December, January, February. All those months are typically cold, especially up north. We have less sun. Sun gives off what? Vitamin D. Vitamin
Mm-hmm.
D helps stabilize our mood. If your vitamin
Mm.
D is low, it will cause you to have depression. That's
And there's a
not
difference
major depression.
in
It will
vitamin
cause
D
you to have a
right.
depressed mood. So
And there's
just
a
because
deficiency in vitamin D. So families, get your children's blood drawn like once a year or so, and make sure they take those vitamins. I know we forget because we're busy, and it's just a lot for sometimes for us, but they need that vitamin D, as she just mentioned, which I didn't even think about. That is that it contributes to our mood. So a lot of children, if they're deficient, I mean, hey, a lot of children are committing suicide too, right? So it's very interesting that you bring that up.
right, yeah, and I would like to also, before we end, the chat is not allowing me to put the resources there, but I know we've talked a lot about suicide. There are some signs and symptoms of looking at children and adults of what some signs and symptoms may be, if they may be suicidal or not. That can be very helpful in preventing some of these attempts. Because most people who want to commit suicide have a plan, even though they may not tell us, but they have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So yeah, the winter months, what usually happen? Older people or sickly people, they die.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, if you can make it, if an older or sickly person can make it through the winter months, they typically make it at least halfway through the next year, until June. Um, and you have the holidays as well. So you have a lot of factors that contribute to a low mood.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know it's the anniversary coming up of somebody's death, don't wait till that day of the death to deal with it. You know that, all right, my aunt's been dead for 5 years.
Yeah.
So, and she might have died on Christmas, might have died on Thanksgiving, might have died, somewhere around that time. And it doesn't have to even necessarily be Thanksgiving. But if you have an anniversary of a death of somebody that you love, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself of how to honor them. Remember them in a positive way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cope with their grief. Don't just say, well, we all have our time. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's not how you really feel it in your heart, and it's showing through your mood.
Mm-hmm.
Deal with it, feel with it, go through your stages of grief. Allow yourself to grieve.
Yes. And process it. It's okay. This is
Yeah,
that next part, coping, right? How do we process it? Because I know people throw around that word a lot, especially, clinical and counseling professionals, process, right? So what does processing look like? Counselors?
you want to start? I know I've been talking a lot.
No, you're fine. Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what does coping? I mean, what does processing look like? Like when we process it, we have to process it. They have to process it. Let's share an example on what that means. Clear it up.
That's a good question. I really honestly feel like it just depends on the person. Like when I'm going through something has happened that has gotten me down, I kind of need to step back from everything. I kind of isolate myself and I need to sit down in silence, clear my head. For somebody else, they may need to be around other people just to kind of help boost, their energy up to not focus on it, but until
Mm-hmm.
they're ready to kind of focus on it. Because
Right.
when it comes to coping, usually what I see with kids that I work with, if they continue their regular routine after something has happened, they kind of move along, but they will discuss it, but they discuss it in a healthy way. When they're not able to continue on with life as it is, they kind of focus in on that because that's the only thing that their mind can concentrate on. And so
Mm-hmm.
and then everything that happens, Johnny stepped on my shoe. I don't know why I keep saying Johnny. Johnny,
That's your favorite name.
I don't know why,
Yeah.
but
It's the name of the
Boy.
right,
Cocoa boy,
right.
Johnny.
But Johnny stepped on my shoelace. It becomes a big thing. But let's get to the heart of what's going on. Like, and I've had kids like that. And I'm like, okay, so what's really going on? Like, explain to me the situation that happened in the hallway, and then tell me what's happening. And so when they go into detail, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So go back. So the real issue is your grandfather passed away and you haven't been able to talk to anybody because kids are going to tell you everything. Eventually they're gonna get it out. They have
Mhm.
no choice. They love to talk. So it's like getting them to just get to what it is. Okay, so tell me, what do you need? A lot of times I ask my kids, they don't know what that means. I'm like, tell me what it is that you need me to do to help you through the process. And
Mhm.
a lot of them just want to take a break from whatever they're doing just to clear their head. It really honestly depends on the person.
And
Um,
processing it, just to go a little deeper, like just the psychological part of it is
yeah,
it's your ability to reflect on what is bothering you,
yeah,
dissect the situation and break it down into the components of what caused this emotional feeling so that you can process it, meaning come to grips with it and be like,
yeah,
okay, I need to do this, or I need to do, like, maybe for instance you might have to stay away from somebody because you process this situation that happened between you two and you realize that they not really, this relationship ain't really too conducive for you. It's not healthy. You're tired of, always bending for the person or giving in and making them feel validated. And at this point
yeah.
now, it's becoming a burden for you. So as the trigger word, I mean, the key word I said in that was I've been able to reflect, and you've realized through processing it that it wasn't this a big of a deal. I'm able to overcome it and get through it because it was whatever it was. You able to break it down and process it. That's what we mean by process it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's different for kids because they don't know how to process it. So you have to have that conversation with them in order to get them to process it because they don't know,
That
especially if
coaching.
nobody hasn't given them the tools. Like some kids can tell you this happened and this is why I feel this way, and they can break it all down. Other kids don't have the words to say, okay, this is what the issue is. So, and I work with elementary kids, so it becomes hard sometimes because it's like teeth sometimes pulling it
Yep.
out. Like I
Yes.
got to take 5,000 questions to even get to the max
Yes.
and then try to tie it all back in and make it make sense.
That's how one of my children are. Like my boys are night and day. Same
Yeah,
mom, same dad, but they are literally sun and moon, right?
yeah,
With moods, behaviors, and etc. My son, that's like night, he will keep it all in. He's one of those calm, very subtle people, but he will be so silent about what he's going through that I will never know that he was going through any type of depression. He'll process it and deal with it and all of that in solitude. But
mm,
then once it gets to that extreme, for some situations where he's done when he comes to me with it, I know he wasn't able to get through it on his own because he
yeah,
don't really talk about it. So when he finally covered, and the point of that was to share. Some kids, they will not come to you until it's at that extreme or
hmm,
it's at that point. And if we're not able to validate them or even adults or family members, we're not able to validate them and just allow them to understand. I understand what you're saying. I know what you're going through. All right, and just give them a minute to get it out or whatever they're going through instead of giving them a whole bunch that can really just send them over the top. It's just giving that grace to people, especially the kids, so that they can have that ability to really process the things that they go through. But my son, that's like Day, he will go through his emotional part. Like he's more open and vocal about his what he's going through. So he'll come to me and express his tears when he's gotten to a point where it's like it's too much. Like the peers are this and the kids are dealing with a lot today, a whole lot. Like children are so violent today. They talk to each other so rude and disrespectful. I had to get him, to get himself out of one of his school social groups on the text because the kids were just so disrespectful, calling each other all types of names, putting pictures in the group chat to kind of pick on each other that they've kind of taken off guard. Like they don't even understand how abusive their behavior is.
And it's sad because instead of processing it with them and really getting to the root, it's sad because that's when you have the conduct disorders and the different labels put on the children. And then when the labels are put on the children, especially if they're in foster care, guess what? They're going to move to a different home. They're going to step up another level. They step up to a level 3 foster home levels. Then they're going to be moving every 6 months or every 3 months. And nobody ever stopped and actually cared. And that's what's really sad, because they don't know how to say, I'm hurting. They could say, I'm angry. They could say, well, they deserve it, because it's easy to be angry. Even for us as adults, it's easy to be angry. It's harder to cry and not say I'm weak because I'm crying. It's harder to say that this broke me and I need a hug, or something. I need somebody to care.
Yeah. And then that resilience, hoping, that resilience, being able to, even through adversities and struggles and letdowns and hits and all the things you take just to kind of break people trying to break you down, and the just experiences trying to break you down, right? Just being able to process it so that you can get over it, move past it emotionally, if nothing else. No one's saying you're going to forget about it, because that's invalid, right? It's more so it cannot emotionally drag me down anymore. It has no more hold on me. Like some people will carry forever a grudge of something, right? But you don't even understand that you're holding on to that poison. It's a poison. Grudge is a poison, and you're holding on to that toxic, poisonous emotion, as opposed to processing it to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not emotionally attached to this situation anymore. I'm not going to put myself in that situation anymore. However, there's no love lost, no bad blood. It is what it is. I'm processed it. It's not. I'm not going through my emotional state because something happened to me. Things are going to happen all the time. I'm going to be emotionally intelligent enough to control it.
And one thing that I've used and I've seen my family use is because I try to do things realistically and things that I know I would do, or that I feel like will truly work, is for me it's music with my family.
Oh, I love music. Music therapy.
My younger brother, he's a child prodigy on the piano. My older brother, he's a great producer. Now, and I play in the corner by myself. I don't want nobody to hear it. It's just for me. But it was always a way to just get all of that emotion out. Even as a child, you would start off with a song that was quick, that could express your feelings, express that anger and frustration. You feel like you're banging on the piano. And then you end with something soft. Other people, they draw. I know a lot of kids, they draw because they don't know words. But if you look at a child's drawing, when they start drawing that dark anime with the dark eyes and everything is black, they're telling you how dark their thoughts are. And so you have to, that comes with that attunement and that is their way of processing it. And they're saying, this is how I feel. But the next step is how to pull you out of this dark drawing and bring some sunshine, bring some color into your drawing, bring some color into your wardrobe. And a lot of kids that have that depression, they also have that trauma. And you can't deal with the trauma until they actually learn how to cope, which is part of their processing. So it could be starting
and
off
we
with
had
something.
one of our live shares information. It's the one with domestic abuse and Dr. Valera, where she speaks to that, just being able to darn it, I lost my train of thought trying to multitask. She spoke to that.
But yeah, the processing is the meat and potatoes of the
experiences. There it goes. Diverse childhood experiences.
Yeah, the ACEs. Right. Yeah, and that makes a big difference. Don't it needs to stop being ignored and worked through. So
I think too, like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's fine.
I was going to say, I know we've talked a lot about like being angry and people responding angry, but I think sometimes in the process of processing, they need to let that out. You know, I've had students who needed to come into the room for a minute and throw something across the room and yell and scream and cuss. And for me, I give them that moment too, because that is how they know how to get it out at that moment. And once they're able to calm themselves down, then we reset and say, okay, what is it that is happening? How can we change the behavior, the response to what's happening next time? And I think when you're able to build a relationship, especially with students, they respond to you differently when they're going through those moments of trauma or those moments of sadness or anxiety or whatever it may be. You have to be able to meet them where they are. You got to allow them to be angry in that moment, because some of them don't have the tools. Nobody's giving it to them. And that's a big piece. Like, even as adults, I see adults now who are 40, 50 years old and just going off the handle. And it's like, ma'am, you're too old for that. But nobody has ever given them the tools. And then some people never take advantage of the resources that are available to them to get the tools. And so in the processing of it, like, everybody's going to process different. And there are healthy ways to process. But until they can get to that healthy space, you got to be able to create a safe space that gives them grace to just say, I just want to throw this chair across the room. Good, throw that chair, but don't throw it over here at me. You know what I'm saying? Like, just let it out, you know? And it happens like that sometimes. And it's in the moment, you're like, what the hell is happening? But you realize, like, they have so much they're carrying, they need to get out in the way that they know how. And then once they get it out their way, they're willing, 9 out of 10 times, they're willing to sit down and do it your way so that you can show them how to do it moving forward.
Yeah.
Or just some more pot, and everything is communication. How we say things is going to determine on how someone is able to, receive the message that we're trying to give them through it. So communication is important. Like, coaching is so important for these kids. Just support, sometimes being able to share information with our friends that may be going through things. Sometimes we feel like, we just should be an ear, but sometimes we can also randomly, hey, I saw this and thought of you. I just wanted to share this for you. Just that care for someone else in consideration, right? So we're going to go get into some resources. Some resources for like self-help and first off, let's talk about the National Suicide Prevention Line. This is a national resource where you are able to, no matter what state you're located in, call to get some type of support. It's a hotline. They have a plethora of referrals, like so many different referral resources and everything. Because think about it, in the community, we're trying to share this information, share this resource. This is why we do these lives every single month consistently, to bring mental health education, community discussions that, of topics that are impacting the community, our communities all the time, our country, like sometimes we talk about things that's going on in the world because it is just a lot that is impacting us. We have access to everything now, so we're living in America and getting news from things that's going on in China and Europe and Russia and all of these other places. And it's impacting us psychologically as well. Another resource we have, again, for the Department of Human and Human Services. This is your resource for food, shelter. If you are in need, let's try to get these resources. A big reason why we don't taking advantage of it is because we don't know about it. So we're sharing this information. So now you know, and it's going to be here. And even when you don't see them here, they'll be on our website and you'll have access for it. Department of Labor, if you need a job, we referenced this last month, you know, if you have family that are going through some things or they're in violence heavy, recommend maybe, you know, maybe they need a job or something. They need something to do. So regardless of what, even if they don't, this is a resource for whoever may need it. Every state has it. The website has employment trainings, all types of free resources for the community to access and for the betterment of themselves. And then also counselors in the community association. We offer a plethora of services, from if you're looking for a therapist and need that support, or your family, your children need advocacy services for mental health. IEP support, advocacy. We also are starting parenting classes in February. So we will have the sign up coming in January for families that want to join. The information will be on our website as well. Come January for you to see, and the requirements and the standards and all those other things to be able to get into the parenting classes. And we also are offering a lot social emotional learning workshops throughout the state of Maryland. Currently in Baltimore City through many recreation centers that is available for your children. It is free as of now. Let's take advantage of these resources for our children and get what they need. You know, let's not ignore them and feel like, oh, my child doesn't need it. But yes, they do. They need it heavily right now so that they can grow into profound, secure, successful adults who are emotionally intelligent and able to navigate this crazy world. Clinicians of color for BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and people of color therapists. This is another resource for you to find a counselor or therapist to work with if you're in need. And they have therapists all over the country, really. And then we also have the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, another national resource. And of course, NAMI is another national resource available for us. We want to thank you so much for joining us live, really. And before we go, Tammara, like, what's your one last mic drop statement for anyone? Something you want to leave the people with as it relates to depression and,
Tammara. And I guess, well, if I'm dropping the mic, I guess I would say it's okay not to be okay. Not being okay is not weakness, but asking for help is a strength.
Yashica, you want to leave a Christmas thought?
Not a Christmas thought. I'm like, what? A Christmas thought. I just want to say, I don't really know what I want to say. I just want to say that, really honestly, to give grace to people. That is a big word for me this year, giving grace to people and allowing people to be vulnerable in spaces that we've never allowed people to be vulnerable in, and stop pushing this idea of being strong and pushing through. And that's creating a lot of different variables within a lot of our mental health. So I would say give grace to people and allow people to be vulnerable, I guess. Yeah.
And the last thing I want to leave people with, as we go into the season and the new year, we all do our New Year resolutions and our goals and things like that. So let's start establishing some wellness goals. Let's start putting more mental wellness education, information, reels, and things like that. Not just looking at things telling us what it is, but at least some way for us to broaden our awareness so that we have more, our brain has more tools to fight that high and low experiences we go through, and take advantage of the resources that are available. We are no longer in a time where there's no resources. We are no longer in a time where there's nothing out here to support us. We are no longer in a time where it's just systemic oppression we can put the blame on. Now it's time for us to step up, because we are in a time of awareness where we have information access at our fingertips. And it's not just for entertainment purposes. You feel me? It's let's step up for ourselves so that we can end some of this generational stuff, our bloodlines being poverty and stricken, where that's all they know, that's all they teach their kids, that's all we continue in our communities, when now we have resources available to take advantage of that can help us with our mental health, that can help us with our physical health, from free health insurance to free programs if you can't afford it. And everything does not need to be free. If we can invest in our personal weaves and everything else, and yes, it's our business, we do what we want. But my thing is, let's stop acting like we can't afford to take care of ourselves as well. You know, not just buying the things that we want and things like that, but take advantage of these resources because it's out here for us. We don't take advantage of them, then they're gone. Now we're back to square one, like, dang, I need something like this. But yeah, there was something out here. Check the research records, check the books, it be out here. And, you know, for Black communities, Black people, you know what they say, right? If you want to hide something from a Black person, put it in a book, put it in some literature. Because what, we don't read? So, okay, we can't change people's thoughts, ignorance, you know, whatever they want to carry on in life. But what we can do is just be aware that, all right, if I need something, I know I need to go look for it. I'm trying to get out of this cycle of just, you know, maybe not having much income to do anything because I'm trying to maintain certain benefits, so I ain't really got to do anything, or being comfortable with just not even applying pressure on ourselves to become our better selves. Mm-hmm. Again, we create a cycle and community of people who just are okay with settling and not doing their best, but feeling entitled to something or someone to take care and support them, because that's what it comes down to eventually, whether you're dependent on the state, the system, or whatever. That's what it comes down to eventually, as opposed to being able to support our own needs and contribute to the greatness of somebody else being able to do the same thing. So again, thank you for joining us. I hope that this was an impactful live. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And we will see you in January. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.